My name is Shannon Hutchison and my pronouns are she, her, and I am doing a video series around labels. And the reason that I started this was because I am part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and I struggled for a long time to come out. What really held me back from wanting to come out was that I was scared that I would be defined by that label. But after I came out, I started to have deeper conversations with people around labels and how they are impacting them and how it's impacted them, and really wanting us to move the world together. So I think a way we can do that is through stories and through understanding.
Thinking about the I am statements, and if I was introducing myself yesterday or a different day, it would be different. But today, I'm trying my best. I'm dynamic and I'm kind.
Yeah.
And I'm teachable.
I like the addition of saying today. Right.
Before it was sort of a stagnant concrete term.
Okay.
And I find if I have a concrete term or a label that is not dynamic, I think that's why I said dynamic, or changing.
Yeah.
It got me stuck. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Could you give examples of that?
I'm a wife. I'm a health professional. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic's one that got me stuck the most.
Okay.
And I think what happened with labels for me, or that happens for labels that aren't changing for me or have that possibility, is I attach a judgment with them. So even if it was like I'm a mother,
right,
I have an expectation. I look at other mothers and I think they're perfect, or there's this ideal that should be achieved. And somehow when I attach the label I'm a mother, I would think of my deficits, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I found a lot of labels, if I'm attaching something to it, it would poke at my sort of very subconscious part of me that I've realized in the past little bit, that I'm less than, or I'm broken, or I am unworthy of love kind of thing. And I never even knew that was there, but I could find that judgments associated with labels would feed that insecurity of me.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that it's almost like as soon as you say a label, then there's these expectations that you're not meeting. Right?
Yeah.
I'm curious because I know, like in your meetings, that you say your name and then you say I am an alcoholic. Is that empowering for you, or did that bring, like, does it lead into the label?
Okay, it's a good question, and it's interesting because that was saying I'm Cassandra, I'm an alcoholic. It's been different at different times. So when I was able to say the first time I am an alcoholic, it brought up a lot of emotions, actually for a lot of years. I think if I said it, I would be crying, but it was almost a cathartic relief. Yeah, what I found helpful about being around other alcoholics in recovery is all of a sudden I didn't feel like I was alone, because it was a very disconnecting, isolating disease. My primary relationship was with the substance to essentially numb, just sort of, feeling that loneliness, sadness, like I said, sort of that feeling that I was flawed, and if I was actually my true self with people, they wouldn't like me, and having that kind of unease in myself. And I found if I numbed it, alcohol would bring it down and just kind of make it calmer. When I had the support and was with other people, and I could see other people who identified as an alcoholic, and I could relate to their stories and see that they understood the situation I was in, and I could see that they had gotten better, and they were like in this just happy, glowing, authentic state. And especially when I started, I couldn't imagine life without alcohol. I was like, that's gonna be boring, and like, that's fun, the fun place stuff. But I could see these people living an existence that I didn't even didn't even think was possible, right? And they were kind of glowing this energy and this happiness, and like joking about some of the silly things that they did in the past, which, if I was thinking about doing those things at that point, it was just so shameful, and like I must be the worst person to be doing this, and no one else would do this. And then I hear all these stories, I'm like, oh, I'm really not that special. I mean, I'm wonderful and unique, but just like everyone else, right? So it sort of normalized that, and I found that that was a big step for me to sort of open up, just that feeling of I'm not alone, like other people can understand. There was a solution, and there was a way to address the problem, I guess.
Right.
So dynamic or changing. And before then, I was really attached to that concrete label. I was an alcoholic. I was doomed. There was no way I could fix it. It was done. Kind of thing. Even like, yeah, just that the concreteness of labels is what I found unhelpful for me in life, if I think about that. Like, even I'm a wife. That was one that I stuck to for a long time too, because that was almost, I think, a measurement of success for me, and I didn't even realize that too. I sort of, you know, the fairy tales, you find your prince and you live happily ever after, right?
Yeah.
And then my happily ever after, I was sort of like, oh, huh.
You weren't on a horse riding with Cass.
It's life, and then it's funny, right? Like, people are people. We're all dynamic and changing and trying our best, right?
You have said a lot of good stuff that has made me think, like, but in doing these interviews, we're seeing a lot of themes come up, and there's a few I want to address.
Okay.
One is community, and how important community is, and how important being understood is. So I'm curious around the fact, like, when you said I am an alcoholic and you were with other alcoholics, it almost has removed the expectations and the judgments, like, because they've been through it, they understand, versus if you're saying I'm an alcoholic to me or somebody else. I don't know if this is true, but is there fear of the judgments in there?
Yeah. It's funny, it almost brought me to tears a bit, because saying you're an alcoholic around a bunch of people that are alcoholics and understand it, it was such like a wonderful experience. It's a crummy situation. It's uncomfortable to be like, I'm an alcoholic, this sucks. But I found, I was thinking about this, and it was really hard because, again, the isolating part of the disease is I was surrounded by a lot of people who loved me very much, and I loved very much, but they weren't alcoholics. They could drink, or maybe they could, you know, go on a bender or whatever, but they weren't alcoholics, so they couldn't understand why it wasn't stopping, and why they couldn't fix me, and why they couldn't help me. And it was very frustrating. And it's frustrating for me too, because I didn't want to see them upset.
Right.
But what I learned too, alcohol, essentially I have an allergy. I'm allergic to alcohol. If I put it in my mouth like a drop, I get thirstier. I want more and more and more. Versus normal reaction would be you have a couple, you're kind of tired, or you feel like crummy the next day. I'm not doing it again, but Anyway, so I have an abnormal physical reaction to it, and also a rumination about it. So hearing other people understand it was great, because I found my people around me who loved me very much and wanted to help and wanted to support me, and I wanted to accept their help and stuff, but I couldn't because I sounded crazy to them. Like, and it would be like, you have children, you know, stop drinking, be a good mother, and I wanted nothing more than that. And I couldn't understand why that love for them or that desire to change wouldn't fix it. And it's like, so then being around other alcoholics, realizing, it's actually, an allergy and that sort of stuff. And it's not a moral fiber kind of thing, or like strength of character, because we've got that. So there was a different solution there. And the other thing, so that connection, because like I said, the shame thing with drinking, like there'd be things that you do, like just, you know, hiding alcohol or what, I mean, everyone different, but things where, like, even just simple example, you know, that bender, you know, you're going on a bender, you do stupid things, you feel like garbage the next day, and it's kind of insanity just to be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna start drinking again. But so explaining that to my people, like, I just couldn't, because if there's something flawed with me, and then I distance, right? So, and I didn't want to see them hurt, so I just distanced more and more. People's tendencies to help sometimes are to give solutions, or to, here's a tissue, you know, calm, and even a tissue it's a nice gesture, but it's sending a message to, can you stop crying, you know? It's making me uncomfortable, kind of thing.
Right.
You know, so they're trying to change the emotions or calm the emotions or offer solutions to fix it. And so I found in my life, I didn't want to share my feelings with people because I didn't feel they could offer me solutions, and I didn't want to upset them with my feelings, right?
Right.
But what I've learned is it's so neat when someone holds space and just sits in it. And so you would be one person where I'd do that, where I'd be upset about something, you're like, yeah, that sucks. Like, and just being present in it and sort of being like, yes, that sounds like normal feelings to me. I'd feel like that too.
Right.
You know, and just letting me kind of sit in those feelings, but, you know, but acknowledging it, right?
Right.
And I think too, that would be a lot of, especially initially being around other alcoholics, you know, just crying and sobbing with all this shame and gut wrenching, just everything. And they're just nodding. They're like, yep. Because they're like, we know what it is, but not trying to placate,
Right.
but also saying, you know, this sucks, but it doesn't have to be this way too. But you know, the uncomfortable feelings are good. They're just information that let you know maybe it's something needs to change, right?
Totally. And sitting in it. There's a couple things that came up for me with that. And through all of these interviews, we're seeing another pattern of just be with me and don't fix what's happening and believe me. Believe my feelings, believe what I'm saying.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And I think that that's so powerful and something that a lot of us are probably, I mean, it takes personal work to be able to sit with somebody's sadness because you have to be able to sit with your own first. You were talking before about labels and how it sets up expectations, but then there's also society that you feel expectations from, you feel judgment from. And so you had mentioned with an alcoholic, I'm not a bad person. It has nothing to do with my morals.
Yeah.
Have you felt in the past that society has felt that you are a bad person because you're an alcoholic, that you're not choosing your children over alcohol?
Well, and it's interesting because I think I've just sort of permeated or like soaked in society kind of norms or beliefs. I wasn't an alcoholic because I had a home, I wasn't drinking from a paper bag, and I wasn't living under a bridge, right? Like that was my definition of alcoholic, right? So I was functional alcoholic, right? Because again, with my labels, when they were stuck on the external manifestations, right? So, and I couldn't really get into this inside thing. Like I had a husband, I looked happy on the outside, I could smile, I could show up, right? I had healthy children, I could hug them, put them to bed at night, make them meals. I had a job, right?
It's like, how can I be an alcoholic and and be a mom? Those two, like it's like,
well, and
but I'm a mom, and I'm a wife, and I have a house,
and I'm doing all these things, so I must not be that bad, right? But even though it's funny, because in my heart, it's like gut too. I knew alcohol was a problem. I knew alcohol was a problem for a long time. Like it was sort of scary because I'd try to stop sometimes and then I wouldn't, but then my brain would be like, oh, but I didn't really want to, or I don't really need to. But the energy to make up these stories, I knew I was licked. I knew I couldn't do it, right? And with alcoholism too, it's a progressive disease, so it gets worse and worse. So these external manifestations slowly started to kind of get little cracks and crumble a little bit, right? And what I will say is eventually at my turning point where I felt that I had to address it, my external indicators were starting to match the crumbling and just the sadness inside. It was like a dis-ease in my system, right? My heart and my brain weren't being aligned. And so I always felt unsettled and I didn't know why. But alcohol, just if I drank that, it just calmed it. And for me, when I was 13, I had my first drink and I was like, oh, this is what people feel like. Then it's just been a process, because then just feelings come up. Like I started really early just stuffing feelings, because actually that's another label that I sort of grew up with. I don't know how I picked up, but I am a girl. And when I grew up, or how I perceived I was a girl when I was younger, were girls are fragile and irrational, so I ignored it. So drinking alcohol was a symptom. And so I had to stop drinking alcohol before I realized, oh my gosh, my heart and my head and my gut, like it's just, this inner stuff needs to get worked on, right? The external stuff will come, but I was sort of doing it backwards as a kid. You know, I need to get an education, I need to get my money, I need to get a good husband, I need to have kids, I need to look pretty, and then I'll be happy.
Right.
And I got it all, like, and it was neat because I got it all, and I was like, I'm still not, like, I'm not happy.
What do you think brought you to this point now? Like, I didn't actually know that it was a progressive disease. I didn't know that, but if I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what brought you to the point to look inwards and to start working on the inside?
Yeah, so alcohol actually it's a chronic, so it's a disease that never goes away. Progressive, so it gets worse as it goes, and it's actually fatal too, which, I mean, if you keep drinking, yeah, 100%. Anyways, but there is recovery. Well, see, I'm stubborn, Shannon.
Yeah.
Like, if I was like an adult learner, you know, do you learn with audio or visual or tactile? No, I just learned the hard way. Like, that is it. So, yeah, so what brought me to change? Like, it was just, well, they say rock bottom. I mean, rock bottom is different for everyone. I had a lot of really low points, and I think everyone from the outside would be like, okay, now she'll get change.
Right.
Now she'll do it. But anyway, I hit a lot of them. Yeah, my disease kept on getting worse and worse. And then it got to the point, and can be common. And it also, there's a lot of people that realize they're alcoholics and stop drinking and work on themselves a lot earlier than blackout drinking and not being able to stop. But for me, yeah, I actually was it was just physically, I took my last drink that ended up to be 3 months. I just could not stop drinking at that point.
Right.
And actually it was beautiful and sad and wonderful, but there was a point, and I just was lying on the ground. I'm like, I need to go to detox, but it was sort of like, I can't do this on my own.
Right.
I need help. Like, and it was sort of, it was neat. It was like, not me talking, and it was almost like my heart opened, and it was like leaning into the fear where it's like, oh yeah, I don't have to do it on my own. I don't have to control it all. I need help. And it was just, yeah, it was a lot of things. So I can't really say it was one thing, but I'll say, so I guess that would be my rock bottom. But I think what I've heard for common experience for a lot of people for rock bottom is it's just like, yeah, I give up, I surrender. What I'm doing isn't working. And it was so relieving almost to just be like I'm capable, I can do all these things, right? But I'm 40 years old, and it was 40. I don't really know how to live and thrive, right? Like, internally. So it was sort of like, it's okay. And like, because rationally, I think that was the thing too. A lot of times I would be like, okay, I'll accept help, I'll listen to these people, but my brain likes to be like, no, they're wrong with that, or, you know, I'm smarter than them this way, or I've got it. Like, it was always sort of distancing. And I think there was, at some point, I think it was almost like my heart took over. And I think my heart had been aching for a long time for connection too, right? Like, it's exhausting doing everything on your own, but not even realizing you're doing it on your own. Like, I've got people around me, but I think there's a difference to, like, truly accepting help from people. That makes sense.
Totally.
So then the crash and realizing that I had to change something. And like I said, so it was a physical dependence on alcohol. So I had to get that sorted because I needed alcohol out of my system. But the alcohol is a symptom. And then I sort of, once I accepted that I needed help, and that the concept that I could maybe learn a different way of living and thriving.
What would you want to say to people who aren't alcoholics?
I didn't have any alcoholic role models or alcoholic role models in recovery growing up. I didn't know, like, my concept of alcoholic was, like I said, a homeless old white dude just under a bridge. I don't know why, that was just what it was. So I didn't think that any educated female mother could be an alcoholic. We all have certain visions of what certain labels look like, and I think realizing that maybe our visions or our labels or our assumptions aren't necessarily valid, or being surprised by the fact that we have those labels or assumptions, I think is the first step. Being like, oh, that's interesting that I thought that, or I was surprised to see that that person's struggling with that. Why is that a surprise to me, right?
Totally.
I think that's like a first little spark, right?
It's the awareness. And our brains are going to jump to that, and that's okay. That I assume that that's what an alcoholic looks like.
Yeah.
But challenging, why do I think that, and how does it affect my behavior?
I think the conversation about labels, and I don't know if it's just me because I'm kind of living in recovery or hearing it, but I just feel like it's being talked about more. It's not being shushed a lot. You know, even movie stars or, you know, big celebrities who are talking about struggles with addiction and how there's a solution, that sort of thing, are coming out more versus, you know, my grandparents or, you know, medical history then, oh, we don't talk about that kind of thing. So I think it's just continuing to have the discussions about these things. And I just feel like we're going in a more open, non-hush-hush way about a lot of different labels and a lot of different struggles and a lot of different challenges that I think when we have the challenges again, if we just keep them to ourselves and hide them, you know, it's the shame, and they grow and they manifest, but then it's like you sort of talk about them little by little, and then you get that connection, inclusion, that not aloneness, and somehow it just calms it. I find for my label, I'm an alcoholic, it's definitely not about me promoting it to anyone, changing anyone's opinion, nothing like that, right? It's just about authentically expressing myself, and people can see that and do what they will with it, right? And then that's their feeling, that's their thing to own, and stuff like that too, right? I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion.
I appreciate you talking about it, because I strongly do believe that through talking about it is where we change the narrative. Would you share a time and experience where the two labels of mom and alcoholic were like running up against each other, and it was like a hard moment?
Well, I didn't know it was a disease. Again, I thought it was just a moral thing. So I'm like, okay, if I just be a better person or have more responsibilities, or once I become, actually that was a big one I had. Once I become a mother, I won't want to drink. I like my maternal drive will just inspire me to take care of myself, and I'll be so absorbed with the love for my children that like alcohol won't even, you know, come into play. Okay, so my first pregnancy, I was like, this is great. I am going to be, yeah, I don't know, just a good person now, right? I'll be happy, and the drinking will go away, right?
Right.
And it didn't, right? And it didn't at all. And like, so, and I'm not alone in that experience too. And like I said, for me, oh, I just felt so bad, because I was just assuming every other mother would have this primal instinct and this nurturing thing, that it is just, I'm so flawed that I would still want to drink. I would still be thinking about drinking when I was pregnant, you know, or after when I had the kids, right? And like I'll say, it kept going, right? And for me, it was hard because I just like so much shame. I couldn't even identify with the shame, and just was, but I was not going to tell anyone about this, because I couldn't get help. If I told anyone that, like, that is the worst thing ever. So that shame really got me for a long time too.
Right.
Until it got more, and it took more and more away from me, right? And I'm not alone in this experience too, but it would be like, I love my kids, but you know, I would just want them to rush and go to bed so I could, you know, start drinking, right? So the disease, or the obsession for getting booze, drinking booze and stuff like that, it took me out of the relationship with them. Like, I perfunctorily did a lot of stuff, you know, but it would always just leave me a little, they say itchy bitchy twitchy, or restless, irritable, and discontent is kind of the thing. And it was just so neat to see, once I recognized the label I had, kind of identified with it, it gave me some power, because at least there was a solution, and there was, you know, recovery and different ways of doing that.
What would you like to tell, like go back and tell little you? Like if you were to go back, you see little Cassandra, what would you tell?
Oh, I'm gonna cry. I like this one. Okay. I was just saying this to Taylor last night too. It's like, listen to your heart.
Yeah.
Your heart and your gut, right? You know. Like, you're wise and you know.
Yeah.
But even, I guess too, it's like, little Cassandra wasn't in a place where she could do that too. So listen to your gut, you're wise and you know, and like, you're capable of change. You're gonna be okay.
I love it.
Here.
Thank you so much.
You're
This was
welcome.
amazing. The big reason that we're wanting to do this is, I think a lot of times people want to help. I like to think that people have good hearts. They want to help and they want to understand people, but they don't know how to take that step, don't know how to be an ally. They don't know what questions to ask, what questions not to ask. And I'm hoping, like, through this series that people are able to watch it and maybe take that next step.